Tēnā koutou katoa. We acknowledge that there is a strength beyond ourselves when we work together to serve others. May we put aside our own personal interests, work with integrity and openness, striving to create a community that supports its people and the environment. Let us, in a moment of quiet, focus on why we're here. We give thanks for the wisdom of the past, look for opportunities in the present, and accept the challenges of the future. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to this ordinary meeting of the Council, Napier City Council. Do we have any apologies? I think we've got a full house, haven't we? Yep, so there are no apologies. Are there any conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest?
No conflicts.
No conflicts of interest. Can I just remind both councillors and the public that this is actually being live streamed, and I need to remind myself that frequently as well. But it is being live streamed, and you should know that. I've just looked at announcements by the Mayor, reminded that a record is being taken. There are also recordings being taken by staff for record purposes. Are there any announcements by management? There's none. So the confirmation of the minutes, the draft minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on Tuesday the 15th of May 2018 be confirmed and true and accurate record of the meeting. Moved by Councillor Bogue, seconded by Councillor Haig. All those in favour, please say aye. I intend to leave lying on the table the draft minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Council held on Friday the 1st of June. I think it's better that they be confirmed at our Council meeting on the 29th of June. So we move on to hearings of submissions on the representation review. Could I remind submitters that they have 5 minutes only. There will be a bell, and we've got a very full day, so there will be a bell rung at 4.5 minutes, and you'll be asked to stop at 5 minutes if you haven't finished. So at 4.5 minutes, please finish up. And just remind you also that you are only entitled to speak to your submission and not on other matters. So, Mark, you're first up.
Quality democratic processes are important and foster a richer form of citizenship and civic engagement. Electoral arrangements need to be representative and fair so that communities feel they have influence and can affect change. That, of course, is the Local Government Act of 2001. Your Worship and Councillors, ngā mihi kia koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the representation review in support of a full ward system of 12 councillors, as was strongly recommended. My motivation to submit stems from the same reason I opposed amalgamation: a desire to participate in a vibrant, engaged and inclusive community. The sort of community that is described in your mission statement, with Napier the best city in New Zealand in which to live, work, raise a family and enjoy a safe and satisfying life. By not adopting a cogent and highly professional council report and opting for the status quo, I believe is a weak move and that is counter to your published purpose. The purpose of the Napier City Council is to enable democratic, local decision-making to meet the current and future needs of Napier. A full ward representation provides a powerful opportunity to adjust to our rapidly changing world. We're in the middle of a fundamental shift, a revolution in the way the world operates. There's a convergence of communication, energy and mobility changes, which are being driven by the Internet of Things and big data. This is about to radically disrupt our world. Never has engagement and inclusion been more important, and never has technology made it easier. It's disappointing that the majority of council appear to be relying on instinct and are ignoring the data that was available in the report. My views are coloured by 10 years as a Napier principal, an involvement in a change project that saw the establishment of William Colenso College replacing Wycliffe and Colenso High School, as well as recent international consultancy experience in investment analysis-driven project management, futuring in the field of education and smart cities, and change management. I've worked in large-scale projects. The scope of work has ranged from a new school startup in Beijing, a national teacher development project in Cairo, the development of a strategic enterprise performance and delivery unit in Brunei, and the development of a strategy and blueprint to support the establishment of a multi-billion-dollar new Clark City in the Philippines. Change management has always been absolutely central to this work. The quality of stakeholder engagement will determine the success of any enterprise. If NAPE is to become an inclusive, engaged community, it's essential that the Council represents the diversity of the city and ensures that each and every community is fully involved. The status quo is not delivering this. Recent events suggest that many in Napier are seeking a richer form of citizenship and civic engagement. Unfortunately, the lack of clear representation is marring this engagement, which is too often marked by disharmony, bitterness and vitriol. Many, perhaps mistakenly, feel that the only way they can have influence and affect change is through social media and protest. This to me suggests the status quo is not working. So I strongly urge you to take this review seriously. Put information and data ahead of your personal preference and adopt a much more inclusive and engaging electoral system. A full ward system is what the Local Government Act envisaged, and more importantly, it's what the city needs as we face up to the inevitable disruptions of the data revolution. A full ward system will enable Napier to position itself to become a genuine, democratic city where all groups feel as though they have a direct voice by having community representatives that they have elected and identify with. Quality democratic processes are important. A full ward system is both representative and fair and will foster a richer form of citizenship and civic engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Paul Bailey is next.
Just any questions?
Any questions for the previous matter?
Well, you can take questions inside your 5 minutes of yes.
No,
Are there any
mate,
questions?
you didn't have any questions for the previous matter because you didn't ask.
Well, does anybody have any questions? Thank you for helping run the thing, Paul.
That's all right.
Are there any questions of Mark? There's none. The rules are. Paul.
Well, could you pull the mic a bit closer so Jerry can hear?
Yep, no worries. Te whare e Tanui, tēnā kau. Te papa ai whaiho, tēnā kau. Ki te whānau, hui hui. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Paul Bailey ahau. No te awa ahau. Hi kawana ahau mau. Tea kinuhira arohi o tea matu amaui. No ria, ki ora, tātou katoa. God, you can beat me up if I've done it. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to hear my submission. I focused on three things in my written submission. One was around the ward system at the end of the day, unless it has proportional representation, I don't think is democratically representative. The other one was around that ward councillors seem to be more visible to their local communities. Perhaps that's just because Maxine and Api are my ward councillors. And the other one, of course, is I mentioned that it was more challenging to stand in terms of resources as I'd imagine as a at-large councillor rather than one that's a ward councillor. But I want to just put that third one to one side. And what I wanted to say was that, you know, I'm a great believer in representation should be at the lowest level possible. I mean, decision making should be at the lowest level possible. So as close to the people as we possibly can get. And that's the reason why the main reason why I'm a big supporter of a full ward system is that ward councillors represent less people than the at-large councillors. So you get much more opportunity to actually engage with the community as things go on, because we've all heard the cries from the community about how they're uncomfortable with the way things have been happening. We got a blast from that at our long-term plan submission hearings as well. So we're not, the regional council is immune to that as well. So that was pretty much all I was going to say. But no, to say thank you for the time to hear what I had to say, Bill.
Has anybody got any questions of Paul?
Just one
Councillor
question.
Price.
Yep.
What area do you cover?
Sorry?
What area do you cover?
I represent the Napier ward. So the regional council was split into 5 wards, and we have 3 councillors in the Napier ward.
That's the whole of Napier.
That's the whole of Napier, yeah, but not forgetting, of course, that we actually represent the whole region.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Oddington.
Through the Chair, Paul, you say in your submission your preference would be for a larger number of wards. How many?
Oh, I'm not. I haven't got any fixed ideas about that. But I think if you have more wards, then again it decreases the size of population that each councillor has to be looking after, and so again you're getting the representation at the lowest level possible.
So you're saying more than 4? You prefer more than 4?
Because how many wards are there at the moment?
4.
4. Yeah, and I'd suggest more than 4 if there's 12 of you. I mean, you'd have to divide it up by mesh blocks and all that sort of nonsense, which is what the staff would do for you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I can see
On
you.
the corner. Thank you, Paul, and I think you've got a unique perspective on this because you cover essentially our large area as well as being a ward councillor.
Yep.
One of the sticking points for me on this is that currently everyone who votes gets to vote for a majority of council representatives on this council. With the mixed system. So one of the sticking points for me, and I'm interested in your view on this, is that with a full ward system, no voter would ever get to vote for a majority of councillors. Therefore, is there a risk they become disconnected with decision making because they cannot influence it?
You're quite right, and look, it's like every argument. There's pros and cons on either side.
You do see that as a
Yeah,
con?
absolutely.
I'm just
yeah.
looking for some different perspectives that I may not have thought of, but if you don't have one, I'm happy.
Yeah, not
with that.
necessarily. No, I don't see. I mean, so that's a positive of having at-large system. But I also look at that as a negative as well. Like I say, the lower down you can bring decision makers to the people they represent, I think the better off we are.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Bill.
Is Fran Lowe here, please?
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I support a full ward system as shown by your officer's analysis that should provide or promote more competitively contested elections, improved voter turnout, more homogeneous wards, more improved sense of involvement and representation for voters, fewer expenses for those who wish to contest an election, and decision-making that better reflects the wishes of the whole Napier population, perhaps. 12 councillors will give sufficient coverage for better representation. The wards that they represent need to be smaller and more homogeneous. And I don't particularly support community boards, although I haven't said anything about that in my submissions. So. I understand that, well, from my reading, that there are 3 arguments that support retaining the status quo. Can I speak to that?
Yep.
Yep. One of the arguments is that it works. I wonder who it works for, the councillors who are elected without opposition or the ratepayer. Does it work for businesses or residents? The council's analysis indicate that a ward system works better than the status quo. Contemplating change can be difficult, but a new ward system will bring new perspective and new energy. Another argument is ward councillors will not have the needs of the city at heart. That's the whole city. This is very concerning, as if councillors are that narrow in their allegiance, then one must assume that current at-large councillors are not interested in the needs of the wards. I expect that this is not the case, and that the opposite will not be the case under a ward system. Of course, the needs of the city will be considered in decision making, requiring perhaps a greater degree of balancing business and residents' needs than exists at the present. Finally, it is said that people will have fewer representatives to vote for. This may be a positive advantage, as at least the candidates will be known to the voter, and they will be able to expect that the successful candidates will have an ongoing presence in the area and be accessible to them, as the previous speaker has indicated. Thank you.
Right, any questions of Fran? No questions? Thank you very much for your submission. Rosalind Muir.
Good afternoon. Representation and community involvement, that's the key that I'm hearing, and that's what I'm thinking about too. As said previously, yes, it takes only a 2-minute glance at Facebook to see that there is a massive disconnect between the community and what's happening in local government. I had a quick look on the Napier City Council website and read through who the councillors were and what their interests were. And it was quite concerning for me actually, because there are only 2 councillors that had listed as their interests community, and those were my ward councillors here. That's cool that everyone else has hobbies and businesses and so on, but again, that doesn't really make it too relatable for a lot of people in the community. And even looking around the room here, without being rude, I wonder how many people there are under 40. You know, to me, it's just pure logic that if there's the chance to be more engaged at the local level with more localised type councillors, that you're more likely to have those demographics that, the people that don't vote will actually be more engaged and more likely to vote. And while I appreciate that, yes, we need business to be booming to keep the local community employed and all the rest of it, we need a bit more of a sort of personal focus on the people so that more working class people get represented, I think. Yeah, that's really all I had to say. Community boards, again, important because they give a chance for more sort of local type people to have a voice and get involved in decision making.
Any questions, councillors, of Rosalind? Councillor Hay.
Yes, thank you for that. Just picking up your point around the number of councillors who you perceive to have an interest in community. So at the moment, if you think about the most recent election, I think even within wards, there are not always huge numbers of candidates standing. And you're talking about the fact it would be great to have more candidates standing who have a kind of grassroots approach. Have you got ideas? Do you think a full ward system would change that, or do you have any ideas on how that could be?
I do. I think the communities, as in the wards themselves, would be more likely to get involved because, and this isn't specific to Napier, I've lived overseas, right? Like in Sweden, for example, everybody is a lot more interested in politics. In New Zealand, it's kind of only rich old white men that discuss it. I mean, no, but you laugh, and
I'm wondering when I'm getting my money.
So there has to be a more grassroots feel. I mean, I'm part of the Piromai Residents Association, and we have Maxine and Arpi come to a lot of our functions. We know who they are, we can talk to them, we can ask questions, we know we can contact them anytime because they are visible in our community, and that just makes a huge difference. It really does. There's a lot of younger people joining that Residents Association, and I think they're getting a lot more interested in what's happening in our wider community, with our city and the area moving forward.
Right, thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Was it a few months ago, I think you called me with regards to a pathway?
Yes.
In your ward. Did you call anyone else at the time and talk to them?
Well, I've been involved with the Residents Association and had discussions around that at our meetings. I also went to the Hastings City Council as well to talk about.
Yeah, I'm just meaning with regards to councillors.
No, just these guys and you.
So
yeah.
Ward councillors and
because
at large.
We've got that local sort of touch. And again, I was put on to you by somebody that I knew who knew to refer me to you.
Yep, fair enough. And secondly, when you say you meet these guys at different events within the Piromai Residents Association, do the at-large councillors get invited?
Good question. No idea.
They do sometimes, and I've been down there a few times. So, yeah. When invited.
Councillor Price.
Just one question, and that was a good presentation. You said that you were having these meetings with Maxine and API at them, and people are coming along, younger people.
Yes.
So is the system not working?
Well, our system that's kind of, I guess, native to our area is working.
It is working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, Rosalind. Jenny.
Can't stay on.
Rōranga tirama, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tau.
Can you just try and speak into the microphone so the recording can pick it up, please? No, you don't have to touch it, just into it. That's it.
As soon as you start talking, it'll pick you up.
Okay, kia ora everyone, Rōranga tirama. Tautoko here ngā mihi kua mahia, supporting what we've all received right now. Tētahi uri o te rohi nei, no Ngāti Hinepare, no etahi waka nehera, which is in English, I'm a descendant of this region, Ngāti Hinepare in particular, strong female lines from ancient waka. And as you will see, I'm also a descendant of more recent settlers, and some of whom came out from Scotland as free Presbyterians, persecuted, couldn't practice their beliefs, had to come here to Aotearoa. And other parts of my whakapapa, there has never been conflict along racial lines that I know of in my family. There might be differences, but nothing that would be construed as a conflict. So I will proceed. Settler government mindset has been, I said minimal, but it's ingrained since the inception of Napier City Council and its predecessors. Marginalised sectors are still marginalised to this day. Hospitality is a key feature of all societies. Tū tangata whenua, manaakitanga, the process of showing respect, generosity and care for others, is edified through mana, where one cannot receive mana without first giving it. Doubling ward councillors would replace councillors at large. 2 councillors per ward would share the load and address disparities. Working with fellow ward councillors could also minimise some blindsiding noticeable to the ratepayers. Aligning councillors with their community would result in councillors being more accessible to their communities, along with more accountability to their constituents within existing boundaries. Quoting New Zealand's Local Government Commission guidelines, your job, councillors, is to achieve fair and effective representation for all individuals, organisations and communities in your area. I would like to acknowledge the Napier City Council staff and their thorough analysis of Napier's demographics and subsequent recommendations, demonstrating that Napier City is indeed, does contain a deep and agile skill base. Aligning the community and the council whom you represent as councillors, I'm urging you to be present for common unity. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, huri rauna, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Right, so I've been living in Napier for quite a while, by the way. Just toss that one in.
Are there any questions of Jenny? If not, thank you very much, Jenny, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Now, I understand Marianne Masters is not here, is that right?
She's an apology.
So, Murray.
Old rich white man. Kia ora katoa. I'm Murray Mills and I speak on behalf of the Cathedral EJP, Environment, Justice and Peace Network. We think this issue of electoral representation does raise significant issues for justice and democracy right here in our own city. The report affirms that the full ward system produces the fairest and most effective representation on council. I see it as a parallel with MMP really, and it's on a national level. We know these elections have brought fresh and healthy diversity to the range of our MPs. It's quite a different scene there now. It encourages a wider range of candidates to stand. In our case, it would mean a fair and fuller geographic spread across the city. Women, younger people, minority groups will all find it more possible and more attractive to stand. Better democracy, if you like. More importantly, it means a fuller number of citizens will begin to see themselves being reflected in their elected members. They're more likely to have a new confidence in approaching representatives who are more likely to know where they're coming from and are more likely to take action on their behalf. The horror story of the Grenfell fire in UK spelled out how tragic this disconnection of unrepresented people can be. The imbalances New Zealand and worldwide, potential supporters of low-income and minority candidates, despite all our efforts in publicity and education, are alienated against the establishment and don't get out to vote. And those who make the effort to vote then feel their voices don't get anywhere. Whereas candidates from more affluent suburbs can be sure of higher voter turnouts and be more confidently crunch the numbers. At-large campaigning weighs in favour of those with cash, time and resources, and those who are already in prominent positions and in the public eye are at an advantage. 25 years ago, my wife stood for the regional council, and we'd only just been in Napier a little while and had to represent the whole of Napier. It was a very daunting and purse-stretching task. I have another story from my family, which might be interesting. For 45 years, Mills has served on one of the borough councils in Auckland, and both my father and grandfather were mayors there for over many years. One election, a new party came into being, a ratepayers party, and of course they had one plank to their party: cut the rates. The existing complacent councillors all thought they were nutters and dismissed them. 2 months before the election, my father came to the council, and there were 12 councillors, and said, I've divided the council into 12 slices. I'm going to take the one where our shop is. It's been there for 50 years. I'm going to go personally speak to every family in that district, and I think you've got to do the same. He did it, and the others did nothing. And on the election night, the mayor lost to the ratepayers, and 11 ratepayers got in, and Dad was second on the poll. On the election day, all my aunts and uncles and us teenagers got into cars and made sure everybody got to the polling booth. My father proved that a local face within a manageable area, accessible, one the range of locals could be confident to see themselves reflected in, and by whom their sexual interests and specific needs would be represented, would get out and made the connection with the election. I think the 6 councillors covering wards and 6 not, it must be an imbalance in the council. Full ward representation would reinforce the local in the local body. So we seek a fuller consideration of the review and the election of the full council on a ward-only basis.
Right, thank you, Murray. Are there any questions of Murray? Councillor McGrath.
Murray, you commented on the MMP.
Yeah.
Is that not a split system where you vote for a person and then you vote for a party?
Yeah, but the result is, on a national level, the result is much better representation. That's why.
I'm just saying it's a split.
But you're saying that in Napier you wouldn't have that. Yeah. No.
Get the 4.5. Are any further questions? Thank you, Murray. Now, Pat McGill is unable. Was anybody going to present on Pat's behalf? He did suggest he was going to ask somebody to present on his behalf, but obviously not. Pat, I think, is in the sky in a plane at the moment, somewhere.
In London.
And Minnie Radamer would be the same. So she's, so it's Robin Gwen.
I've been finding it hard to hear, and I think it's because this is a bit too far away. I'm hoping you can hear me. Democracy Part 2 for me. This is the second of my 3 submissions to you on the need for better democracy. The first was to your 10-year plan. The third will be the hearing at the High Court on Monday week. So thank you for the opportunity. Just 5 minutes. It took your council officers 147 pages to present their report, and congratulations to them on their effort. It's a complex subject. It seems your submitters have thought about it in greater depth than councillors had when they first discussed it in March, so congratulations to my fellow submitters too. I focus on 2 issues which neither councillors nor submitters have developed, and I ask one question. Fundamental to the issue of fairness, which is at the heart of this, is whether Unit Napier is one homogeneous, uniform community of interest. And the answer is it is not. Napier is not as large as some other cities, of course. It still has over 450 kilometres of roads. So if you're one of the 6% of our citizens who have no access to a vehicle, it's actually forbiddingly large. And those roads wind their way through very different communities of interest. The easiest way to make the point is to look at the statistics of social deprivation compiled by national government experts and researchers from census information. One thing missing from the officer's report is a map reflecting the differences between our wards in deprivation terms, which would have made the very particular problems Napier faces very clear. I first understood this myself when I stood for council early this century. In 1998, of the 13 people on council, 10 came either from Taradale Green Meadows or from the Hill. In 2001, 11 of the 13 came either from Taradale Green Meadows or from the Hill. In 2004, again, 11 of the 13 from those places. The large areas of Onikawa, Piramai, Tamatea, the outskirts like Bayview and Te Awa went completely unrepresented. That situation has improved a bit, but only a bit, with the partial system we now have. Why should it matter? The map shows why. In this map of Napier, you've got the hill at the top, you've got Taradale Green Meadows at the bottom. It's a map I acquired from the DHB, which is concerned about deprivation because of its health consequences. In the map, green represents the wealthiest 2 deciles of our community. So when you are looking at here, you've got Green Meadows, Taradale North and South. They're very heavily green. They are the wealthiest part, in fact, of our community. The other obvious area with quite a lot of green is Napier Hill. So, surprise, surprise, where did our representatives come from? It wasn't representative. Red represents the most deprived areas. They're the worst 2 deciles. Dark orange is the next worst. The map should still be a fair representation today, although I think our Hariri might now have a bit of green in it. So what was happening was that a council heavily laden with members who lived in the more affluent areas were making decisions without adequate representation of concentrated areas of deprivation elsewhere in the city. And again, the situation has improved a bit, but only a bit, with the partial ward system. If the poorer elements of Napier were more evenly spread through the city, this would not perhaps be a problem. In Hastings, for instance, they are quite well spread, except for Flaxmere. But in Napier, they're not. They're very concentrated. And because of that, it is essential that we have as representative a system in the localities as possible. I'll jump my second point. No time, apparently. I leave you with a question. What's your vision? You've obviously got one for Marine Parade. I see it when I drive past every day. But where's your vision for encouraging us citizens to work, putting together the society we want?
Thank you, Robin. Is there a quick question of Dr. Gwynn?
Yes, I'll be quick, Your Worship. Robin, all
Not your question that I'm worried about being quick, it's the answer.
Robin, all voters wish to see people on council they relate to and they have confidence in. And one of the sticking points with me, with the full ward system, is that some wards will only have 2 or 3 members, and if 4 or 6 stand and you don't get the 2 or 3 and you wish, you'll have nobody that you identify with or have confidence on your council. Does that concern you?
If we have a working ward system which involves actually meeting with your constituents, and there hasn't been a ward meeting, I don't think, in my ward since wards came in, and that's now nearly 10 years ago. But if you had a properly working ward system, yes, I would swap what your worries for the worry of at least having someone I knew locally who I could go and talk to.
And can I be quick with just to follow through? A system where you had 8 ward councillors, so there were no single wards, and 4 at large would allow voters to vote for up to 8 people, 7 or 8 people. Do you have any comfort with that system?
Not particularly. What's the point? I mean, the fact is, ward councillors and everyone has to make decisions for the good of Napier as a whole. And the questions that the people I see who've submitted to you have put actually question the accountability of the at-large councillors. None of them are questioning the ward councillors.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gwynn. So, councillors, we move on to item 1 on the agenda, which, funnily enough, is the representative review submissions on the initial proposal. And if you have a look at the officer's recommendation, we are required to hear the submitters, which we've just done, and then we are basically required to then decide what system we prefer going forward. It's as simple as that. So, Councillor Boak.
I have a resolution to move, Mr Mayor, when it's appropriate.
No, you're welcome to... Sorry? Oh, sorry. The Chief Executive's quite right. We should actually deliberate on what the submitters have been telling us first before we move to a so that's absolutely correct. So I could perhaps start that off. I'm just interested to hear Mr Cleary talking about he wanting a vibrant and inclusive council. My view is that's exactly what we've got. I noticed that Rosalind Muir said that she only has to look a 2-minute look at Facebook to see how disconnected the council is with the people. Well, I can assure you that we are not going to run this council through some of the Facebook sites that I've seen. And you mentioned about on the Napier City Council website that we listed our hobbies and our businesses, and only 2 councillors mentioned that they were keen on the community. Well, can I just remind you perhaps that those hobbies and businesses that we've been involved or are involved in are also in the community. Murray, you mentioned that, you want to see women, younger people, well, and that the current system must be in imbalance. Well, if you have a look at the current council, we have got 6 women, 6 men. For the first time ever, we've got a councillor who is Maori, although he stood as a ward councillor, not on the fact that he was Maori. We've got a great balance. And I look around here, I can see some extreme lefties, some less extreme lefties. I can see some right-wingers. I can see we've got a whole collection. What you've got, and we talked about we've heard about younger people coming on. Are you 30 yet?
Yep, just.
Just.
That's a bit rough.
Yeah.
And I've been here for 5 years.
And she's been here for 5 years, so she's been here since she's 25. Councillor McGrath's only young fellow. We've got councillors in their 40s. Councillor Price
Too bad.
ups the average a bit, but it's, look, we have got a council elected by the people of Napier, some through wards, some at large, but we have got a council who have a diverse amount of skills. They have complementary skills. They are equal in terms of gender. You know, to me, we've got this council that you're looking at now is an excellent example of how this mixed system works. So that's my view. Are there anybody else comment on the submissions? Councillor Tapani? Oh no, Councillor Haig.
Really appreciated the submissions. I thought a lot of food for thought in there, and one of the points that Mark Cleary made I thought is particularly pertinent to our decision making. Mark talked about focusing less on instinct and more on data and analysis. I'd probably argue the toss with that, Mark, and say that I think good decision making combines both in an appropriate measure. And that there are some people who elect us as councillors just to get on and make decisions on their behalf, and others who are really, really keen to be involved in the decision making. So I guess today our challenge is to bring a balance of data and instinct to the decision that we make.
Councillor McGrath.
Can I just follow up on that? We're sitting here talking about people, but we're relying on some numbers that have been put together. They were all numbers. Did we have reasons why these numbers existed? For example, the last election, there was no mayor to elect, so a lot of people didn't vote. But all you saw was the numbers, not necessarily the reasons or the problems. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Any further comments in the deliberation? Councillor White.
Through the Mayor, I'd just like to make the comment about the submitters. I believe that they were totally community focused. They're intelligent people. They're saying the status quo is not still acceptable. We need to look at change management, and change management is important. And sometimes we have to take a step back and say, is this personal? Is it working? And I think this is what has been highlighted today by the points made by the submitters, that we actually have to really think. We've got a 147-page report, in-depth report, a report that I've never seen before, and I have been through electoral processes before. We have never been provided that sort of information. So I congratulate the staff, particularly on the depth and the knowledge that they brought to the table. I thank the submitters for what they brought to the table, and I think as councillors we have to be honest in ourselves about not being personal in our decisions, but and make the decision today that is best for the city going forward.
Councillor Wright.
I just want to thank all the submitters today. When I voted for the status quo, I voted for it because I was unsure about what people would really want, and I was looking forward to this process to hear from the people what they wanted, and you have delivered that to me today, and you've made it absolutely clear that you think a full ward system is a more democratic approach. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, so Jeffrey.
I too voted for the status quo, but by default I preferred a higher balance in ward representation. Like I believe we 3 wards with 3 in Taradale, 3 in Napier South and 2 in Ahuroa appropriate, leaving 4 at-large councillors. That would mean everybody could vote for 6 or 7 people. They'd identify with those people on their council. But I've been, moved by the debate today, and again, I can only mirror my colleagues' comments, and thank you very much.
Councillor Wise.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually haven't had the opportunity to vote on this yet, and it's been fantastic to work through the whole process and get to read the submissions and hear you all today. I'm in the position where I've been both a ward councillor and this term an at-large councillor, and it's been interesting comparing the two roles. I certainly felt that as a ward councillor there is a higher connection with your specific community. I think the reason that the fact that I was a ward councillor first has actually stood me in good stead as an at-large councillor, because a lot of the Taradale community still associate myself with their community and contact me anyway. But I do think that someone that has always been an at-large councillor would perhaps feel that there is a level of disconnect, and that I can't speak on their behalf obviously, but I can see how that could potentially happen. My biggest concern as well was the fact that a full ward system would mean our community would only have the ability to vote for 3 or 4 people. However, what I've heard today and what I've read in the submissions has assured me that the fact that our community will feel more connected and are going to know the people better that they are voting for will actually overcome that disadvantage. So for that reason, that allays some of my fears in that area. So I guess, you know, the upshot for me, having had experience as a councillor in both roles, and hearing this and considering the very detailed report prepared for us by our staff, I'm also in support of a full ward system for this particular year.
Councillor Taylor.
I'll just speak a little bit more on the submissions rather than other thoughts. It was interesting to hear that there was the contention that a full ward system would improve voter turnout. It's interesting that 75% of New Zealand councils have full ward systems. However, the voter turnout continues to drop every year. So I'm having some difficulty in relating how the ward system would actually change that. And when I look at the statistics relative to Napier in particular, in 2001 we had a 55% turnout for a complete at-large election, and we had 29 candidates, which when I look at what's happened in the years since that 2001, we haven't got close to 29 candidates having a mixed system or a ward system. So I just have some issue with tying those statistics and data to what is actually happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Just a couple of quick comments. I'm the same as Councillor Wise. I've been in both wards. And the good thing about when I was, I'm at large now, but I was at a ward, nobody stood against me, so it was simple. And Councillor Brosnan last term had no one stand against her. And these are ward councillors. I've been at large twice and I haven't got through without anyone standing against me. So the part that you'll get a bigger amount of people turning out for an election isn't supported by that. I just want to make a comment too on this 171 page report, is it?
147.
147. Oh, I might be dyslexic, but if you go to 104, options for the basis of election, out of this, there's 2 options. Based on the above analysis, the 2 effective options for the basis of elections are to retain the mixed system, to move to a ward system. So where it is an outstanding report, and I've got nothing against it, but just remember, the system we've got also got recommended. It hasn't been. At large got all at large got turned out, and was not a system to go through. So we've got two that have been put through. It's like a game of golf. After the second round, there's a cut-off point. At that cut-off point, 2 went through, 1 went out. So when we say about the report, and we put a lot of value on it, I do too, because it does take both systems through. But obviously we'll talk more as the day goes on. Thank you.
So there's any more deliberations on the submissions? There's not. So
No, I'm going to move.
so then we'll move. Then we'll move on to item 1. And Councillor Bogue, if you wish to put your motion, you're more than welcome.
Right, I have a motion which is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Tapine. I wish to move, in light of the vast majority of the submissions and the evidence we received from our governance team's analysis, that Council adopts a full ward system using the existing ward boundaries with 12 councillors and the Mayor and with no community boards. So speaking to this, colleagues, there are so many good reasons for us to support this resolution that I hardly know where to start. But perhaps the best place to start is to acknowledge and thank our governance staff for the huge piece of analytical work they did to inform us on all our options. It's a piece of work that a Cabinet Minister would have been proud of. As we all know, our governance team looked at the Napier City Council elections over the last 40 years to see which type of electoral system was fairest and most effective. They looked at the full ward system, the part ward system, which is the status quo, what we have now, and the at-large system. All those systems have been in existence and have been used in Napier in the last 40 years. The team used all the criteria defined by the Local Government Commission to determine what was the fairest and most effective type of representation. This included looking at the highest voter turnout, the highest number of candidates, having no members elected unopposed, and the greatest spread of candidates. From this detailed analysis, the full ward system came out as the fairest and most effective type of representation. Our current system, as has Councillor Price mentioned, was ranked, but it came out second. And the at-large system was the least fair and least effective type of representation. So it's been very pleasing today to hear the submitters and to read the submissions quoting that analysis as they spoke in favour of the full ward system. In fact, 70% of the submissions we received were in favour of the full ward system, and they gave some very sound reasons. Greater voter turnout and public participation. Wards are fairer, with better representation for people in lower socioeconomic areas and minority groups. Larger numbers of candidates contest seats in a full ward system. There's increased accountability of councillors to their ward communities. There's a shared workload across the wards. It is not as expensive to run in wards, so makes running for council more accessible. Other comments we heard today were also definitely worth noting and have been referred to. But I remind you that we did all argue against amalgamation mainly because we said it's best being represented close to home, an argument which readily fits the full ward model. The arguments against the full ward system and in favour of the mixed system were a lot less compelling and did not tick the local government boxes in terms of their criteria for fair and effective representation. As the analysis of the submission in our agenda, which some of you will have, says, most of the submissions in favour of the status quo gave no reason for their preference. The one comment made was that the submitter liked being able to vote for a greater proportion of councillors than a ward-only system would allow. Now, I mentioned this to a friend at a social event I was at last weekend, and what she said was quite interesting. She said when she gets her little voting book for the local elections, she looks at the names, the list of names she can choose the 6 at-large councillors from and thinks, I don't know these people. They're not from my community or my neighbourhood, and even when they're voted in, I'll never see them. She said it would be better to have fewer people you know, or people with an interest in your area than strangers who you will never see. Today we are voting on our final proposal, and as such we have to comply with legislation that requires that effective representation of communities of interest is provided and fair representation is achieved. We have just 2 options. One is voting for this resolution, which reflects what we've heard and what 70% of our submitters asked for, or to defeat this resolution and pass the original resolution, which only 17% of our submitters asked for. Whichever way we go, we have to provide sound reasons for our decision. I believe we have a clear mandate from our submitters, many of whom were guided by the evidence in our own analysis and who've made a compelling case for the full ward system. So it's quite clear to me from reading the comprehensive analysis and from taking on board the vast majority of submitters who say they want the best, the fairest and the most representative voting system of all, which is the full ward system. That's why I urge you to vote for this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Bowe. Are there any other speakers? Councillor McGrath.
It's long-winded. Yeah. I don't support the resolution. I think the current system works. As said earlier, our mix, 6 male, 6 female. Our wards, we have 3 male, 3 female, and the same split for at-large. We have a full mix of business and community backgrounds, such as retail, finance, health, aged care, education, hospitality, sport, resource management and regulation, policing, youth, culture, arts, parenting. And I challenge you to find a better mix around the country of business and community. And that's all under our current structure. We are fortunate in Napier to have the best of both worlds, with a mix of at-large and ward councillors. Just a note here, many boards have elected members and appointed members, so you can have both. Now, Napier's size, we're only 106 square kilometres. When we compare that to Hastings, 5,229. Our whole city is smaller than some of the Hastings wards. So that's 12 councillors effectively living within a Hastings ward. Napier people believe their community of interest is Napier. That was 67.9%. 0.8% said their ward was their community of interest. An 8 to 10 minute drive from the centre of Napier would get you to over, and I haven't confirmed these figures, 90% of residents within the city. Probably higher. The city's appetite for change. Public survey, the majority wanted the status quo. Only 11.8% wanted the full ward system. Now, I think it's only 26 people out of 60,000 have submitted, yet we're putting a lot of weight on that today. During the amalgamation debate, our residents made it clear they were happy with the status quo. In fact, they didn't want to be a minority partner, basically a ward of Hawke's Bay. So how can we only be able to vote for 3 councillors instead of 7 or 8? How is that better democracy or fairer? 3 per ward would mean 9 wouldn't have the best interests at heart. Currently, 7 to 8 do. Less influence equals less participation for me. Why don't people vote? And will changing fix or change participation rates? Some of the things I've been told. People don't know how or where to post a letter anymore, believe it or not. Negative social media puts people off voting. English is a second language. A general distrust of government. Never met or seen a councillor. Going to a full ward system won't change things, I believe. Has any analysing been done on the effect to voter turnout when the ward has candidates running who do not live in the ward they wish to represent? Has there been any analysis on that? Is that a factor? Cost to run for council. Council is about time, not money. I've got a few results based on this, and of at-large councillors. Councillor Tony Jeffrey spent $0. Dave Hannay spent $0 and got 3,083 votes. Andy Mason spent $152 and got nearly 4,000 votes. For the wards, Councillor Bogue spent $2,337 and got 2,487 votes, which is a lot less than Andy Mason and Dave Hannay got. Graham Taylor, he spent some money, 3185, and he's a ward councillor. And Mark Hamilton, who was unsuccessful, spent $2,663, a lot more than Tony Jeffrey. People run for council because they have time to do so. Are decisions being made today based on ward councillors' workload? Where is council on your priority list? Assuming that family is first, what comes next? Job, career, hobbies, church, political interests? Council is not something you do in your spare time.
Councillor McGrath, can I ask you if you'd sort of close up a bit, because standing orders allow you to speak 5 minutes.
I thought it was 10.
No, 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes for the mover. 5 minutes for somebody supporting or speaking against the motion, and you must be pretty close to that, I would think.
That's right. I've got the time. All right. Sum up. I think we have the best of both worlds. I don't believe one system is better than the other. I believe that the two systems complement each other.
Thank you. Councillor Haig, and then Councillor, somebody over here I saw?
It's me.
Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Haig and then Councillor Jeffrey, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to speak in support of the motion on the table. This has been a difficult decision for me, and I've weighed up lots of data and lots of instinct in the process. I do appreciate that the officer's paper was great and it was data rich, but I actually concur with Councillor Taylor that we need to be cautious with some of the data, and that a decreasing trend in voters is not necessarily aligned to a structure, but maybe to something that's happening across the whole country, including in areas where ward-only systems exist. In addition, I concur with other people who have said that my discussions with some of my constituents have said they like the fact they can now vote for a majority of councillors and they won't be able to under a ward-only system. However, on balance, I am convinced that it is worth looking at a full ward system in order to increase the ethnic diversity of our council. I concur with Mayor Dalton that we do have a diverse council, but I would love to see more ethnicities around our table. If a ward system can deliver that, that would be a fabulous result for Napier. I also think that if we can increase a feeling and a perception of accountability, closeness to our community, and the ability for people to be visible and have conversations, that can also be a good thing in terms of democracy. I do believe that whatever structure we adopt, it will only be as good as its people and the way that the people within that structure behave. But perhaps as a new councillor, not necessarily so vested in the status quo, I'm definitely willing to look at a full ward system as an opportunity to become a more democratic council. So I'm happy to support the motion.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I said earlier, when we're considering the submissions that I voted by default earlier, I won't be doing that today. I can assure you I'm going to support Councillor Bogue's motion. To me, it no longer makes sense to have one representative in Ahuriri and two representatives in our most deprived part of Napier. It just doesn't make any logic at all to me. Although I've always been elected at large, I consider myself a ward councillor because my shop was like a clinic, so basically anybody that in that area that really wanted any attention came and saw me, so I know what it feels like to be a ward councillor. As for Councillor McGrath's comments about having the wherewithal to run a campaign, when I first stood as a comparative unknown, I spent thousands of dollars. It was only when I built up a reputation I found that I could be re-elected without taking out a second mortgage on the house, so to speak. So no, I think let's move forward and get this done.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. We've now had 3 speakers for and 1 against, and I would like to speak against it again. I'm really concerned about this whole idea of somebody going somewhere and they looked at the voting paper and said, I didn't know these people, so I didn't know to vote for them. I mean, it's not just a popularity contest. We are running here a business. We've got $110 million worth of revenue. We've got $1.6 billion worth of assets. We've got 530 staff. We are running a business here. I would hope that when people came to vote, they would look at those people that are at large and say, how many of those people have got the business skills or the administration skills to help run this business? It shouldn't be just a popularity contest. It should be a contest that says, who are the best team, or what is the best team that's going to run the city? In my view, the way to achieve that is giving them the ability to vote for somebody in their ward that's going to handle ward matters, and then be able to vote at the on a citywide basis for those that bring special skills to enable us to run this very considerably sized business. It really concerns me that if we're just going to do it on a popularity contest, we'll actually lose the skills around this table that we need. That's my view. So that's now 2 against. So, Councillor White, were you going to speak for or against?
I was actually going to speak for. Now,
Well, we've had 3 speakers for. Are there any other speakers against?
Mr. Chair, can I just confirm, I believe they have to speak sequentially?
Yeah. So I'm a new speaker.
Sorry.
It has to be 3 against in a row.
Oh.
That's correct.
Okay, that's right. I'm wrong. Councillor White.
I've actually thought long and hard about this because I've actually went to bat against Dr. Quinn 12 years ago. I was a great fan of at-large, and I fought tooth and nail to keep it. I said all the people wanted it that way. I was one of the 29 candidates, and I was absolutely aggrieved that when he took the case to the Local Government Commission. Now, I am convinced if the vote were to go against the full ward system today, that we will see ourselves at the Local Government Commission again, and that the case that has been put up by Councillor Bogue about fair and effective representation, the fact that we've got on our books a report that is very in-depth for the ward system, I would say that whatever the vote today, and if it were to go against the full ward system, that we will see ourselves in the Local Government Commission, and that they will say the evidence is there, we should be going for fair and effective representation. Now, whether I really like that system, I like parts of it. I was like Councillor Jeffrey. I feel that only one in the Ahuriri area is not enough. And so I would like to see 2 there, and I believe that the workload that the Nelson Onikawa ward has is very large and takes up a lot of time. So for me, it's not quite perfect, but I think that to not go down that path today, we'll see ourselves in front of the Local Government Commission. So I will support it.
I don't think we should be frightened of any future actions. You asked me to make the appropriate action today. Councillor Brosnan.
Thank you.
Thank you for correcting me before, Councillor Brosnan.
My apologies
I
for
rely on
doing
you
so.
on these matters.
I think I'm your resident know-it-all, you called me once.
Your house lawyer, I think it was.
Right. Maybe it was me called myself a know-it-all. I'm going to speak in support of Maxine and Api's motion. I, like Councillor Haig, deliberated over this quite a while, and as I said to one of the submitters in a question, the sticking point for me was that the majority of our elected representatives are voted for by any individual voter at each election, and I was challenging myself on whether or not seeing people around this table that you had not had an opportunity to vote for would make you more disengaged with our decision making as a ratepayer. But I take Dr. Gwyn's point that he made that concern is outweighed by all of the benefits of a potential potential full ward system. So I'm going to speak in support of it, and I just make the point that I think we have the opportunity to do this as a trial. We have the opportunity to review our electoral system every 3 years, and I am quite prepared to vote in favour of this motion to see if it results in any change for our communities for this term coming. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors like to speak?
Just like to say one thing, that before the meeting I was going to try and jump in front of you and put what I thought was the preferred option, but I respected what the message you sent out the other day and felt it deserved for you to have the debate. And listening to everyone, you've nailed it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kev.
Just speaking in support.
I don't know. He's speaking in support of Councillor Bogue. I don't know about
Pretty
in
clear
terms
to
of the
me where it's
motion.
heading.
Are there any speakers that wish to speak?
Just the right of reply.
Oh, no, you don't have right.
Hang on.
Just another one in support, Bill. As the ward councillor for Whariri, certainly there's many days that I'd like a hand. I think one councillor in the ward is one too little, maybe three. My concern with the mixed system was the votes that would go
At large, I think.
with Maxine's motion. I support that because that's one way of getting at least 4 votes. I do have concerns if we stick to 4 wards, we end up with just 3 votes per voter. I support the motion.
Councillor Bogue, would you like... Oh, sorry.
Does do you want to say something?
As a seconder, I'm just wanted to speak when the
You can
chair's
speak if you wish.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. To our councillors and to our staff, thank you very much for the open debate and the points on the submissions, as well as the ongoing comments around the robustness behind the governance report, which has informed what is quite obviously a lively debate in our community and here at the table. So I'm speaking in favour of the motion, obviously, as the seconder, primarily moving from the concern that when the status quo was put forward to our community, which was in a direct opposite indicator as was represented by the report, although as Councillor Price says, both options were put forward. I was really looking for opportunities and comments and submissions from the floor that would support the status quo. I didn't see a lot of that coming forward, and some of the comments and points that I've heard today could easily be scuppered and sunk at sea, and I'd be quite happy to run through that rather long list, but in the interest of time I'm just going to pick a couple out. The first thing is around the status quo. It ain't broke, don't fix it. I would challenge that. I'd say as the first Māori on council, and as the Mayor's rightly pointed out, I did not run as a Māori, I ran as a ward constituent. That was because if you have a look at the Māori ward representation review, you'll see that our city is just not ready for that discussion. So had I run as a Māori, I would not have got in based on the general mindset of our city, based on the feedback we've provided here at council. It took Maxine and a large number of our ward 8 months to convince me to say yes to running for this ward, because I had completely disconnected from this process. As a Māori, as a low income earner, as a single parent, as a part-time worker, I had disconnected from council. I did follow the activities of this council in paper and involve myself in conversations in our community for the pluses and minuses, as we all do. But I had very little faith that my presence at this table would make any significant difference, and only the votes of our residents will determine whether or not I've been able to contribute. So from my perspective, the system is broken and it does need fixing. We have an ageing population, we have an increasing number of Māori within that population. We have new players coming into the local scene, and one of those large players are Māori post-settlement groups. Currently, as a Māori, we find it difficult to engage with this process. There is a disconnect. Will a ward system improve that? Only time can tell, Councillor Taylor, but I would say that quoting figures around the 29% of candidates, or the 29 candidates that run for one election, as Matua Gwyn provided in his submission, the majority of those candidates came from Taradale, Green Meadows and the Hill. So for me, this is more about fair, open, and the reduction of barriers for people to participate in this governance. Because as we've had some of these decisions land on this table, the hardest one, especially when we look at the LTP and the pool, we had a 1% difference in public opinion. Our connectedness to our community is where that comes to the fore. The more in tune we are with our community, the more we're able to distinguish that 1%. So I would argue that if I run as a ward councillor, to say that I'm only representing the interests of my ward, I can't deny that. I am representing the interests of my ward. That's why I was elected. However, I take some exception to the statements which would imply that a ward councillor does not represent the interests of the city. That, frankly, while it is just a point, undermines the efforts of any ward councillor at this table. So I would challenge that. There are a whole lot of other reasons which I think a ward system might promote more opportunity for people to participate in our local governance. But the biggest thing is, as a ward councillor in the Nelson Park ward, Councillor Bogue and I, as has been mentioned, and as our other ward councillors will know, the connectivity with our communities does increase our workload. I actually feel for our at-large councillors, because I only have to go back and explain that to my ward. An at-large councillor gets the whole city and then has to go back to the whole city and engage. So there are huge...
Councillor Tarpany, your 5 minutes is up, but finish off.
Thank you, Your Worship. So currently, I guess the best point for me with regards to ward versus at-large is I think it does open up an opportunity, especially for Māori, low income, diversity, ethnic mix, to participate in local governance. We're looking to build a vibrant city. How do we do that if we do not include our community groups? So, my community appointed me and voted me in. My ward will remove me, and I'm happy with that. If a ward councillor doesn't perform, a ward will remove them. I've seen it happen. I'm living evidence of it, as are we. So I look forward to testing the system and allowing our residents greater control at who represents their suburbs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, I think Councillor Taylor wants to have something, and then Councillor Bogue, you'll write a reply.
Sorry, just because everybody was having a chat, I thought I might as well. I just, I concur a little bit with Councillor Brosnan, our youngest member, and as one of those white middle-class business people that go on council, I hope that the decision we make today, which is obviously to go to a full ward system, I hope it makes the difference that everybody is looking forward to. And I'm hoping that as a ward councillor, and I'm sure Councillor Wright will agree with me, that we represent the largest voting populace in our city at Taradale, and for us to have 4 representatives out there, it will be fantastic because we can share that workload across a lot more people. So I'm hoping that what gets passed today will make the difference, that we will get greater representation across greater sectors of our community for our decision-making process. And I'm just glad that we've had that debate. Thank you.
Well done. Councillor Bogue, you'll write a reply.
Right, just finally, I don't know whether people are aware of it or not, but the last time we had a representation review that was contested in any way was 2006-2007, and it resulted in the at-large council who had voted to stay at-large being challenged by various community groups, and I was part of one of them, to move to our current status quo, the mixed ward system, because we felt at the time that it was a compromise, that it was a good way of moving between the at-large and the wards. Well, I think now we are ready to make the next step, and I'm been really appreciative of all the submissions that we received and the comments around this table and people's generosity in accepting that it may not be their first choice, but to understand and appreciate the input of the submitters and the staff. So today, hopefully, as we vote, our vote will be an opportunity to show the community that we are actually listening to them, that we are listening to the people who made that effort to submit, and we're also appreciative of the work our staff does in spending so much time and putting such a wonderfully comprehensive analysis together to inform us. So our decision today really is to reflect the fact that, you know, we are the decision makers and we're going to be making a decision today, but our decisions are made with the community in mind, and I believe that a full ward system will enable us to hear those voices even louder and to reflect them better and to support those people out there. And the other ward councillors will know what it's like. We get rung day and night from people in our wards with particular issues that they'd like us to look at, and it'll be great if we can share that load a lot more widely. So today, I really respect the views that have been expressed here, and I'm hoping that as we move in favour of this resolution, that this will mean a more democratic council and councillors that are closer to their communities and to be more accountable.
Thank you. Well, we've all had a fair old say on this one, and so I'll now put the motion. All those in favour of the motion.
Sorry.
Oh, read the motion. Can somebody read the motion again, please?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Yep.
Just for clarity, did you want to move the entire officer's recommendation with the addition of...
Yep.
We're happy with that.
So it's the entire officer's recommendation with Councillor Vogue's addition.
Are you happy for me to read that?
Yep, if you wouldn't mind, please, Deb.
So the recommendation that you're voting on now is that you hear and deliberate on the submissions to the initial proposal, which you've done, that you determine which system of representation you consider best provides for effective representation of the communities of interest within Napier City, and which provides fair representation, the fundamental determinant of which is population equality within plus or minus 10%. That being that you adopt a full ward system using the existing ward boundaries with 12 councillors in the mayor and with no community boards being established. So that's the...
So everybody clear on what you're voting on? So all those in favour, please say aye.
Mr Mayor, Part C. And Part C. Having decided on that you then direct us, your officers, to record and publicly notify your final proposal and the responses to the submissions, along with the reasons for each response, which we're required to do under Section 19N2 of the Local Electoral Act 2001. So we actually require your reasons for the decision that you've made on your final proposal today.
The reasons will be recorded from the councillors' discussions tonight? Yep.
And we are happy to capture that.
Yep.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
So now, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Nay. I'm going to nay that one.
Oh, you want that recorded, Councillor McGrath?
Either way.
Just for division. So to do that, just go with division.
Did you want it recorded or not? Did you want to record or not? He didn't. No, just didn't record it.
That's fine. We have the division.
Could we just take a break for a minute? Could we just take a break for a minute?
Yep, 30 seconds, Councillor. We've got a lot to get through. We're still missing a couple.
A couple of the old ones. Oh,
Just Api and
young ones.
Well, neither of them could be considered, what was it, white-haired old men, rich men, because
Get the price.
neither of them got any hair.
At that old stale pale male.
It's a
Raymond Foran's favourite saying.
modern haircut.
So it's.
Right, councillors, we move on to item 2, which is the plan change 11 of Park Island reconfiguration, and I would like to move from the chair the officer's recommendation.
I'll second you.
Oh, seconded by councillor Taylor. Is there any discussion to the motion? I'd just like to congratulate the staff on all the work they've done that, and especially Dean. Well done. And it's been a lot of work, and I'm delighted to see it through. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We go to page 68 if we can. Hawke's Bay Museum Trust Board appointment.
Move.
Moved by councillor Brosnan. Seconded by councillor Haig. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. The what?
You're picking the pace up now.
Yes, yes. Then the item 4 is the CCO Hawke's Bay Museums Trust, which is on 70. It's just a legal and operational issue, and it's a statement of intent. Do we need a mover and seconder of that, or do we just accept it? Oh, so we have a mover, please. Moved by councillor Wise, seconded by councillor Wright. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We move to item 5, which is the CCO, same sort of thing, but the Hawke's Bay Airport, on page 76. Moved by councillor Taylor, seconded by councillor Dellimore. Any discussion to the motion? There's not. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Move to page 83 in your agenda, which is the Joint Committee Unconfirmed Minutes. Can I have someone move that be accepted? Councillor Wise, seconded by councillor Dellimore. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We then move on to reports and recommendations from the Standing Committee. Reports from the Maori Consultative Committee held on 19th of June 2018. Again, all these items that are on the Maori Consultative Committee agenda have been through this council anyway. So that's moved by councillor Tapani and seconded by councillor Bogue. Any discussion to the motion? There's not. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So then we move on to the reports from the Strategy and Infrastructure Committee held 29th of May. The first item was the Hawke's Bay Airport Limited Director.
Are at the page, please.
what page?
It's on page 90.
90.
Okay.
This is 90, 91, 92. So first item was on Hawke's Bay Airport Limited. The next one is the Te Committee Murawai o Te Whonga Hariri Estuary Committee, and the third item was the Heritage Improvement Fund Progress Update. Moved by councillor Price, seconded by councillor Brosnan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Then we move on to the reports from the Regulatory Committee held 29th of May 2018. First item is the Napier City Black Friday Fiesta. This is on page 93. Second item is street naming 240 and 250 Guppy Road, Taradale. And third item is parking controls, moved by councillor Haig, seconded by councillor Taylor.
Can I just
Yeah.
a question through you, Mr Mayor? It's about the street naming. I just note the Māori Consultative Committee is keen to be involved around street naming and made that point. So just wondered if there'd be a comment from the CEO around follow-up for that. You happy with that suggestion?
Yeah. Through you, Mr.
Yep.
Chair. So when council officers are working up street names, obviously we'll engage a lot earlier with the Māori Consultative Committee. The issue that we do have obviously is around the private subdivisions, and we just need to look at a process how we can bring the private developers in.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question, or maybe just give the heads up to staff, just on item 1, the Napier City Black Friday fiesta. As you'll recall, we sat through the waste minimalisation hearings, and one of the recommendations out of that is that council lead by example in waste-free events. And so we'd just like to note that when we're putting on events, the likes of recycling bins for our refuge is taken under consideration.
Thank you. Any further comments? We have a proposer and seconder, right?
Yes, Hagan Taylor.
Yep. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So we move on to reports from under Delegated Authority. The first is the official information request, 2nd of May 2018 to 8th of June 2018. Next is the tenders list.
It's really brassed off.
Next is resource consents. And on page 112, the schedule of documents executed under seal. Somebody move they all be approved. Councillor Jeffrey, and seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Can I have a motion to exclude the public, please?
Still people watching.
Move.
Moved by Councillor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Wise. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.